I am so excited to be a part of the very first Terra Firma Q&A. My name is Jessica, and I am the Communications Specialist here at Terra Firma. We are so lucky to have Dr. Michael Olpin as our expert. He has been working on the stress release program used in the Terra Firma app for over 30 years. Dr. Olpin is a professor in the Department of Health Promotion and Human Performance at Weber State University, and is also the director of the Stress Relief Center at Weber State University, which I have heard from several students, including my husband, that it is amazing and so useful. He is also a co-author of the textbook Stress Management for Life, which is used at over 60 universities in the US and Canada. So it is no secret that nurses were dealt an incredibly difficult hand during the pandemic, and even still. In 2022, there was a study published by the National Institute of Health that showed that depression and anxiety were reported by 45% of nurses, and over 47% of nurses were at risk for actually having PTSD symptoms. Most nurses who participated in this study reported having burnout and moral distress. So a common theme among the nursing profession is that there just isn't enough support. Dr. Olpin saw what was going on and knew he needed to do something to help. So he has helped create the Terra Firma app in hopes of providing nurses with more support. During the stress release course, nurses learn how to identify stressors, how to respond to stress, and how to ultimately live a stress-free life. Here at Terra Firma, we sent out a survey to nurses asking what questions they would like to ask Dr. Olpin about stress and stress management. We received some really great responses, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to say, Dr. Olpin.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm very excited to spend a few minutes with some of these questions, and hopefully we'll get them answered in a way that makes sense to everyone and are helpful.
That's perfect. Jody, do you want to start out asking the first question?
Yeah,
or
thanks.
You probably need to introduce yourself, huh?
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jessica. I am Jody Waddups. I am a nurse. I have been a nurse for nearly 30 years. And I, too, am very excited to be part of Terra Firma as the Chief Content Officer and to work with Dr. Michael Olpin and to bring this Q&A to you, sharing his expertise and being able to answer some of the questions. So yeah, let's dig right in.
Okay.
Let's do this.
Do you want to go ahead and ask the first question?
Sure, thanks. The first question that came from our nurses is, I always feel tired, but get enough sleep at night. Could it be stress making me feel this way?
It could be several things. How stress contributes to the fatigue and real tiredness at night is, I'm going to make a long story quite a bit shorter, but if you think about whenever we are in the stress response, or what we well know as the fight or flight response, one of the things that's happening during that is all of the muscles, primarily the fighting and running muscles, go into a state of tension. They go into a state of readiness to fight or run. And what that means is, so like shoulder muscles, back muscles, I mean, all of the muscles that are involved with wanting to kill something or run away from something, which is essentially the fight or flight response, are activated. Now, think about this for a second. If I took this book and I just hold it out like this, and put it like straight out so my arm is straight, I could hold this for a little while. But if I had to keep holding it for very much longer, say 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, my arm would get extremely tired. Well, the same thing is happening when we're in the fight or flight response. In other words, when we are stressed, we have muscles that are essentially trying to lift a book, but for a long time. And the result is we just get fatigued. We just get really tired. And so, I mean, there are other reasons why we might be tired prior to falling or in the evenings, but stress, I think, is one of the most likely culprits for making ourselves really fatigued late at night or early in the night even.
Hmm. So you think someone that's getting enough sleep at night, there could be other reasons, but they definitely take a look at stress.
Yeah, I mean, here's one quick story. I remember one time I was actually working in a bank. It was my job while I was in college, and we had this secretary who, her job, if you watched her during a day, essentially consisted of typing things, handing papers to people, and talking. That was, if you watched her, that's all she did all day long was type, hand papers. Occasionally she'd get up and do something, and then I remember so clearly we were walking to our cars one day and she goes, "Man, I am just so tired. Why am I just so tired?" And I remembered that. I didn't have the answer back then, but now I remembered thinking, how could you possibly be tired? You haven't done anything to make you tired. And yet she was just exhausted, and she didn't do anything physical. So it couldn't be physical exhaustion. So I think the mental exhaustion turns into, or the mental energy turns into physical exhaustion pretty easily.
That makes sense.
So our next question that we received is, what is the most effective stress management strategy?
There's three answers to this question. There's a very short answer, there's a medium, and a long answer to this. The very short answer, and it's the same question, the same answer to what's the best exercise, physical exercise. And the answer to what is the best physical exercise is the one you'll do. And it's the same answer with stress management strategies. It's whatever you will do that works to turn off your stress. Now, that leads to the second the second of the three possible answers. So first, it's whatever you will do. The second is whatever works to take you out of the stress response. Mm-hmm. So all day long, we are active, doing whatever it is we do, but we're also interpreting things. And whenever we interpret things with an uh-oh or a oh geez or a this isn't good thought, our body interprets that as a threat, as a stressor. And what that means is, as soon as the body interprets it that way, then it goes into fight or flight mode. And so we need tools to get us out of fight or flight mode. And there are dozens and dozens of them that work, just to name a few: meditation, yoga, guided relaxation, the things we have in the app, hobbies, exercise, massage. The list is very long for what is the most effective strategy. If you were to ask me, of all the things that we have available to get us out of the stress response, I would say maybe two or three things are things we should almost for sure be doing a lot. One of those is exercise. And the reason why exercise is so great for us to do with stress is because if you've been telling yourself all day long that you're in danger, that things are bad, or any kind of thought that is, oh no, resistance, our body gears up for physical activity. Just automatically, it gears up for fight or flight or physical activity. So the smartest thing we can do is follow through on that message and do something that utilizes that chemistry, that body chemistry of hormones and nervous system activity and muscular activity. And today we call that working out. So running, biking, hiking, whatever it is. The other things that I have found through the years that seem to work tremendously well, we teach meditation, a type of meditation that's really super easy to learn, but it's very, very powerful. I worked with one group of people who were hypertensives. Everybody in this group, they asked me to come and work with them for a bunch of weeks, and everybody in there had high blood pressure. And there's plenty of good evidence that as stress goes up, so does hypertension. It's not a one-to-one, but it's pretty close. And so they had me come, and what we did every week is I taught them how to meditate, this really simple, really powerful way to meditate. And so to the point where after 3 or 4 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks, they had a really good feel for how to do it themselves. And then I just told them, just do this every day. I mean, just do this as importantly as breakfast. You know, it's amazing. We think, oh, I've got to eat right and I got to exercise. But I think that third piece that is as important is managing our stress, reducing our stress. So yeah, that was a long answer for.
That's such a good answer. I love every part of that. It makes so much sense. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that you are able to take what seems like a big unknown and make it into something that we can all use. So thank you for that. All right, the third question is, how would you recommend helping others who are not open-minded to deal with stress management? I think this is a little tricky question, and I'm excited to hear your answer.
It's funny to hear. It sounds strange to not be open-minded to feeling better. I mean, stress management is all about helping us feel better. And so the way to, and I've worked with over 10,000 people through the years. I was actually doing the math, trying to figure out how many people, and it's over 10,000. And I think even those who are really reticent to, do something that is like stress management, they think, oh, this is tree hugging or this is hippie stuff, is we immerse them in simple techniques that work to turn off stress. We immerse them in guided relaxation. And after doing it one time, they're no longer closed-minded to the idea of using stress management techniques to feel better, because they notice how differently they feel after doing a guided relaxation. And when I say a guided relaxation, it's merely they're lying on the floor or they're listening to the audio that we have on the app. But like in my classes or workshops, we'll have them lie on the floor and we'll actually test their heart rate before we start. And just as a measurable device, but we also kind of measure or assess, how are you feeling? And then we do this guided relaxation where I just kind of walk you through a sequence of, and a lot of it is breathing, focusing on the physiology, focusing on thinking about things in very simple sorts of ways. And we do that for, say, 15 minutes is all. And then we have them return to normal, because we have them lying on the floor or sitting in their chairs. And then after we're done, we measure their heart rate again. And it's profound how much people's heart rates drop just by doing that. I mean, it's not uncommon for somebody to have a heart rate of in the 80s or 90s, and after doing one of those guided relaxation exercises for 50 minutes, their heart rate is down in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it's not uncommon. I see it all the time. And so, and then we ask them, how do you feel? And maybe 0.5%. So 1 out of every 200 will say, yeah, that was worthless. That didn't help at all. But almost everybody will say, oh my gosh, I feel way better. I feel remarkably better than I felt 15 minutes ago. And so when they experience that, they're suddenly going to go, wow, give me more of this, because this is far better than before. And I mean, and think about it, wouldn't it be nice to feel that way all the time? And I think it's possible. I think that's something that's within our capabilities as we practice this kind of thing, where we can feel like that for a large majority of our day, rather than fatigue, burnout, overwhelmed, anxious, those kind of things.
Nice. So you turn someone into a believer just by trying it.
Yeah.
And then they say, why not?
People
Yeah.
don't go away. I mean, after they start practicing, they don't just say, oh, that was worthless. Nobody ever says that was worthless. They always say, give me more.
Yeah, they see the value. Nice.
So you've never worked with somebody who is going to say, no, this isn't working for me?
1 out of 200, probably, I would say. Maybe 0.5% of people will say, and at the end of my workshops and the end of my classes, I always do some kind of an evaluation, and it's almost never that people will say that was a waste of my time.
Nice.
Okay, our next question. Is there an optimum daily routine for reducing stress?
So stress reduction, there's two ways to approach stress management. There is stress prevention and there is stress reduction. And the two are different from each other. Stress reduction is the process of taking us out of the stress response back into the what I call the rest and repair response, or rest and repair state, or homeostasis. And that's different than prevention. Prevention is keeping it from happening in the first place, keeping us from getting stressed in the first place. And that's a really, really long conversation that involves learning about how we think about things in ways that don't involve thinking about things, interpreting situations in what we call threatening ways. And so when we ask the question, is there an optimum daily routine? I mean, there are things that we can do that keep us in balance. And so maybe that's what we should focus on with this question. And so the things that I would recommend that we do to keep ourselves in balance, that keep us out of the stress response or turns it off once we are in it, 2 or 3 things that I would strongly recommend, besides, because thinking about, all thoughts begin with all stress begins with how we think about things. Stress isn't out there. There's no such thing as a stressful anything. Things are, and we interpret them how we interpret them. And depending on how we interpret the things will determine whether the body turns on the fight or flight or not. To give an example, when somebody, the number one social fear right now, and it has been for as long as I've been looking at surveys, is public speaking. People would rather die than public speak in some surveys that I have seen. Now, if public speaking were inherently stressful, then everybody who public spoke, is that how you say it, would feel stressed when they do the speaking. But there's plenty of people who stand up in front of groups of people and don't feel the least bit of stress. That tells me that it's not the speaking that is the stressful part. It is the interpretation of it, how we process it in our own minds. And if there's ever any thought of, oh no, oh geez, oh crud, or kind of thought, the body thinks, well, that must be a bear. That must be something that's going to kill me. So I better turn on my fight or flight response. And it doesn't matter what it is out there. If you say, uh-oh, to anything, your body activates the stress response. And if we say it over and over and over and over again, then we call that chronic stress. And so The optimum routine to keep us kind of out of there, besides thinking in happy, positive, grateful, accepting ways, is we do things that promote deep relaxation. So we practice meditation, we practice yoga. And I know people don't have time to go to classes or do that sort of thing, but I haven't been to a yoga class in, I don't know, 20 years. But I practice yoga. In other words, I stretch and breathe just about every day. I was playing pickleball this morning. In between games, I did a little bit. So we practice yoga, we meditate, we can exercise, and we try to eat clean. And if we can do that and get good sleep, all of the people who study wellness, and I mean really strong, really positive wellness, say those 5 things. If you can do those 5 things, meditate, practice yoga, exercise, eat clean, and sleep. And then the 6th for me is manage your thinking correctly, so that you're just going with the flow instead of resisting. That sets you up nicely so your body will constantly be in the rest and repair state rather than the fight or flight state. And when we're in the rest and repair state, everything works better. Our immune system functions strongly. The right hormones are in place. Our muscles aren't tense all day long. So yeah, those 6 things, those 5 plus 1 things seem to be a pretty good routine, I would say.
Wow, that's great. Great tools. Great tools. Okay.
I have an
go ahead,
additional
Jess.
question. Sorry.
Yeah. No, this is great.
So going off of what you said about public speaking and the thought process, so I was just wondering if you could give an example of, I guess, say you were public speaking and your worst fear came true that you forgot your speech. What is the thought process that I guess you would go through to minimize the stress, or not to make it not a stressful situation?
It's a good question.
Well, I would have notes so I could refer to my notes. It's an interesting thing, and not to make light of the question, it's an interesting thing. One of the things that happens in the fight or flight response is our Einstein brain, is what I call it, tends to turn off. Because you don't need your Einstein brain, your thinking, processing, remembering, imagining. You don't need that to get away from a bear, which is the fight or flight response is part of us because our ancestors had to run from a bear or whatever was in their element. And so today we don't have bears, but whenever we say, uh-oh, our body still thinks it's a bear. And so when we're up there on stage and we go, oh man, I can't do this, I'm so nervous, our Einstein brain actually kind of checks out. And that's why, you get ready to take a big test and you're really, really nervous for it and you don't remember anything, or you get ready to speak and you don't remember anything. It's because you don't need that. Your body recognizes that imagining and remembering and processing and theorizing and postulating won't help get away from the bear. So it kind of deliberately pushes it to the side and says, we're going to use everything we have to make sure we can be really fast and really powerful. And so what I do is, or at least one thing that I guess the 2 answers to your question, Jessica, are 1, make your thoughts as much as possible, try to make your thoughts so that they don't include anything that sounds like uh-oh. And so the way I do that is, like, I would just focus on something that is very present. I would just focus on my breathing, or I just focus on what I am going to speak about, or I focus on, this is just prior to the speech. I mean, I would focus on, I'd look out on the audience and I would just kind of, instead of thinking, oh, these people are thinking all these things about me, which I can't possibly know, but I make up that they're judging me and all these. I mean, that's what people are afraid of, is the judgment. And so instead of doing that, I'll just look out on the audience and I'll just kind of go, okay, how many blondes do we have in the audience? How many brunettes? How many males? How many females? How many, I just kind of focus on things that are in this present moment. And whenever we focus on what's in this present moment through our senses, we go into rest and repair. We go out of the stress response. And what that does is it returns Einstein. And so I remember what it is I'm going to say. That's the easiest thing I know of. I mean,
Yeah,
besides having notes.
that makes a lot of sense. And I think that ties into the message in the Terra Firma newsletter for April. And we spoke about just maintaining that calm and then making the next best decision. And that, I think, I love that you always come back to our thinking. It's so much about our thinking and what we're creating in our system.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the stress response is 99.9% based on how we interpret the things that are happening. And so if we can interpret things in ways that aren't filled with threat thoughts, the body will not activate the stress response. And so we say, be grateful instead of anxious, be accepting instead of wanting to control everything, or be, just flow with things that you can't control instead of resisting and wanting them to be different, which most of the time they can't be different. And that's all thinking stuff.
Yeah, makes so much sense.
Definitely. And I will say, when I first started with Terra Firma, and I read somewhere it's written on the website, like, this will eliminate stress. And I'm like, there's no way, that's impossible. Stress, like, there's stress everywhere. But going through that app and learning more about Terra Firma and hearing you speak and everything, it really does make so much sense.
It really does. It really does. So on that same note, the next question I think is a really great question. So we have nurses that have completed the Terra Firma program on the app, quite a few actually, and lots of positive feedback. And they want to know what next. What's the next step after completing the Terra Firma program?
Well, I think on an individual basis, I mean, learning to stay in an unstressed state is a muscle. And just like weightlifting, if you don't lift weights every other day or once a week or whatever frequency you decide, if you don't do that, those muscles will atrophy. And it's the same way with what you learn in the release program and in the Terra Firma app. I mean, I meditate every single day. I started doing it in 1988. Okay, that's not exactly true. I miss a few days here and there, but I try to meditate every single day. And I don't meditate any differently. Like this morning, no, I didn't meditate this morning because I was playing sports. But yesterday, when I started my day, I meditated, and I don't meditate any differently than I did when I started in 1988. The process is exactly the same. And it's the same as when you go to the gym. You see people and they lift weights, they're doing curls, and they're doing overhead pushes and bench presses, and they do the same thing every single time they go. And it's not like you need to do something different all the time. You just practice over and over and over and over just to sustain that rest and repair state. Now, additionally, in the Terra Firma app, I mean, we have the release program, and that's kind of those 13 or 14 modules. In addition to that, there are sections in the Terra Firma app that are like quick hitters. Like if you only have 2 minutes, here are some videos to watch. All of the classes that I've taught that focus on how to think correctly, how to think well, to prevent stress, all of those classes we videotape and are available in the Terra Firma app. And so it's like you get a college education of stress management in the app. All of the guided relaxation exercises, I think there are 40 in there. Half of them are designed to relax and recharge you. The other half are designed to help you fall asleep. You use those. I mean, I still use some of the guided relaxation exercises, although I just with myself, because I know the script. And when I'm falling asleep, that's what I do, is I go through this script in my head and it immediately puts me to sleep. I'm never awake longer than about 15 or 30 seconds.
Wow.
And if I am awake for the longer than that, then I know the script that will put me to sleep immediately. So I'm not sitting there going, I wish I could fall asleep. And so that's in there. And then we have, additionally, there are workbooks. So if you're more of a reader person, there's PDF workbooks of the understanding stress. So we have 5 of them. One is understanding stress. The second one is stress prevention. And that's all the thinking part. With the third book is stress reduction. And that's all the tools that we know of that work to turn off the stress. We mentioned a few of them earlier. The 4th workbook is entirely devoted to mindfulness, which is getting our mind into this present moment, because this present moment is always safe. And if our mind thinks we're safe, the stress response will not turn on. And so we have strategies, tools that the entire workbook is, here's how to do this, get into this, get your mind. So here's the present moment, here's your mind, and you're just putting your mind there instead of future and past, which if you think of a future event and then you add any pain to it, your body thinks it's really happening now, stress response turns on. Same with the past. If you're thinking of like an argument and you relive it in your mind, your body thinks it's happening now and the stress response turns on. And so when you bring your mind into this present moment of here and now through really, really cool techniques, your body goes, oh, I guess there's no threat. So I'm going to go back into rest and repair, into relaxation. And so, like going to the gym, you just keep doing those over and over and over and over, as importantly as eating, lunch or sleeping for however many hours or working out regularly. You just make that part of your daily routine. And the cool thing about that is the more you do that, the better you feel in general. And the more you do that, the less you'll be troubled with sickness and illness and those kind of things. I mean, and I'm not saying this for any reason except to say, here's what's happened. Here's been my experience. It's been at least 12 years since I've gotten sick, where I couldn't function on a day because I was too sick. And there's nothing special about me. There's nothing like, man, you've got fantastic. If you knew my genes, you would be laughing, because I got some really questionable genes when it comes to health. But we know through the science of stress that as the more relaxed we are, the more our immune system cranks. And the opposite is true. The more stressed we are, the less the more stressed we are, the less potent is our immune system. And so it just occurred to me a long, long time ago, if I can keep my immune system strong, I probably won't get as sick as I would if it were not strong. And that's been pretty much the case for a really long time. And people say, you can't be serious. You can't possibly never get sick. And I keep waking up every day going, oh, another day, not sick. It's kind of strange.
Oh, wow. Such great information. So basically, with the Terra Firma program, once they've completed that, they still have a lot of resources to utilize, to refer to, and then just keep practicing it over and over and over.
Yeah. And I think to clarify that, I think, so the nurses, so they're involved with what we call the release program. That's the workshop inside Terra Firma. And then the rest of Terra Firma is all the other things that we have. support or not, as in addition to that release program, because most nurses, I think, when they go into the app, they're doing it for the purpose of doing the release program itself, which is like the class. And then all of these other things are part of the app. Yeah.
And they're still in there. I love that. I love that. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next question. Can you recommend an online community to help me manage my stress?
Well, we have two or three spaces on Facebook that are very supportive of this. The one is the Terra Firma app area on Facebook, and I also have another area that's that I've had for a long time prior to the app, called Stress Management Place. And those are groups where we interact and we can chat about things. We're developing inside the app. Our plans are to, we haven't done much with it yet, but our plans are to have more Q&As, have an ask the expert area, and more community areas. But the one I would suggest is on Facebook, where you can just go in there and ask questions and interact with other people.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. How can stress negatively impact a person's health? And I know you've talked about this in answering the other questions. Is there anything else you want to add to that? How stress negatively impacts a person's health?
So when I was writing the textbook several years ago, one of the things that I did is I was trying to find all the research that showed how stress affects this or that negative health outcome. So like, is stress related to heart disease? And turns out, yes. Is stress related to cancer? So just going through our top chronic diseases, is stress related to cancer? Yes. Is stress related to, or does stress impact chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases? Yes. And we went through, and I actually went through everything, just about all the maladies that are common to our society. And the bottom line is, stress negatively affects stress negatively impacts every single health problem we have in our society, every single one. I can't say stress causes, like there's not a one-to-one relationship between stress and, say, headaches. That's one of the closest ones. But there might be other reasons for headaches, right? There's no one-to-one for stress causes anything. But what we did find is stress makes every single one of them worse. Every single one, every single disease we know of, all the autoimmune diseases, anything pathogenic, emotional, like depression, anxiety. I mean, all of those, stress makes them worse.
Wow.
That's how.
That's definitely something to make sure that we understand, for sure.
Yeah.
Let me just make one quick comment.
Sure.
However, the thing that we do find, the good news is, when you turn off stress, in other words, when you get out of chronic stress and back into rest and repair is part of that. And so healing does happen when we get back in balance, not imbalanced, but back in balance. The body knows how to heal itself. Just like if you were riding your bike and you fell and you cut your arm, and your body, you can't make your arm heal. The body knows how to heal. It just needs to have the right conditions. It's the same way with stress. We just make the right conditions, meaning being in a rest and repair state, and the body just goes, okay, now I'll fix this. But if we're chronically in a stress response state, then it's too busy working on running or fighting something to fix things. You can't.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Okay, our next question, how can you help someone who is stressed out?
So, and I think we've answered this. The way to help somebody get stressed out is take them out of fight or flight response. Okay, take them from chronic stress or acute stress even. It's the same thing. I mean, the solution is the same. You do something that takes them into rest and repair and out of fight or flight. And I always go like this and this because I have this diagram, and up here is fight or you go from homeostasis into fight or flight for however long. And this fight or flight response really is only designed to last about 15, maybe 30 seconds. And then it's supposed to end because that's how it was for our ancestors. And so I say, here's chronic stress and here's rest and repair. And the whole goal of stress management is to move you here to rest and repair out of fight or flight. And so when somebody's acutely stressed, so like, just, oh my gosh, I can't handle this right now. You do something that will take them out of that. So maybe that's breathing, maybe that's something mindful where you just focus on something, get them thinking correctly, can't control this, just let it go kind of thing. And if it's chronic, it's the same thing. You just do activities that will take you out of that, meaning meditation, yoga, exercise, the big five that we talked about earlier.
Plus the one, right? Plus the one. So basically you can help them by knowing what the tools are and offering them a tool like, okay, deep breathe with me, or let's focus on the present moment, and then encouraging them to gain some tools for themselves, because you really can't do it for someone else, but you can encourage them to learn what this is all about.
Exactly. 100%. Exactly. Yes.
Nice. Nice. What are some unhealthy ways to relieve stress?
How much time do we have? I mean, the quick answer to that is just about everything that most people are doing right now, thinking that it works. Chemicals, for example, a lot of people smoke, not as many. I was really encouraged to see that the smoking levels are coming down dramatically from where they were 30 years ago when I kind of started in this field. But a lot of people, when they're stressed, they smoke. A lot of people, when they're stressed and they're really stressed, they lash out, like they resort to anger. If it's just with themselves, it's bad for their heart. But if it's anger and it ends up being against somebody else, then you've also hurt somebody else. I mean, if you think about the fight or flight response, this is interesting. The major emotions that you want that are natural that flow from the fight or flight response are fear and anger. Fight is anger, flight is fear. And so those are natural emotions. And if you're only stressed for a second, like you see a snake and then you run from it, and then you're far enough away from the snake and you are no longer in danger of the snake, it's over, right? But for that moment when you see the snake and it's like you're in its neighborhood, in its vicinity, then you're glad that you have this stress response to get you out of there quick, in 2 seconds, so that you're far enough away. That's good stress. And we like that. We like to have those momentary, but the challenge is most people, they just hold on to things mentally and it turns into chronic stress. And so they turn to alcohol, they turn to tobacco, they turn to whatever drugs. And I'm not against some drugs if their use is very, very short term, but very, very rarely do chemicals, do drugs help in the long run. They do have their place in the short run, say like depression, they do have their place, but I would never recommend that somebody be on any kind of medication for years for anxiety, because it's still, you're just masking the symptom and you're not dealing with the actual cause of your stress, which is when you do so, I mean, when you fix that part, when you fix the seed of your stress, the weed won't grow.
Medication in conjunction with these tools can really be helpful. But without these tools, we're missing a big part of what can help us.
Yeah, here's one example. I mean, depression is so huge right now. A lot of people really struggle with depression. And I recently saw a meta-analysis, in other words, a study of studies, where they looked at all the different ways that the medical world uses to handle depression, psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, that sort of thing, and how effective they are. And what they found was essentially the very best thing that people can do for depression is exercise.
Mm.
Now, if somebody is I remember one study that showed that they compared exercise alone, depression medication alone, and then the combination of the two, like you were saying, Jody. And what they found was exercise alone was better than medication alone, and then the combination of the two seemed to have the best effect. And then what they found in subsequently was those people who exercised, they were able to wean off the depression medication. Which is what we want. We don't want people on depression medication for a long time, because every medication has side effects. And so, and for some people, it's not a big deal, but for others, I mean, I've worked with plenty of people over the years who've really, really struggled with depression, and they've also had horrible health problems with the depression medication. And so exercise, and I would say if you coupled that with those other 4 or 5 things, solves that. I mean, it brings the body back into balance, so it can just naturally heal. I think other things that people do that are unhealthy. I mean, there's so many things that are so good for us. I mean, just going out and walking in the sunshine, getting some fresh air and vitamin D. But if we are never outside, if we're always indoors, and we just don't let, here's kind of an analogy. The stress response is a part of us because our ancestors many, many years ago needed to adapt to their environment. And our ancestors lived in environments that are vastly different than what we live in now. They didn't have electricity. They don't have nice houses. And here's the thing that most wellness professionals will say: if it was good for your ancestor 100 generations ago, or 20 generations ago, or even for your great grandparents, it's probably good for you now. If they didn't experience those things, it's probably not a good thing now, because our bodies are basically, I mean, what is good for us now is what they needed to adapt to years ago. That's why we have an obesity epidemic now, is because our ancestors never ate lots and lots of sugar. Our ancestors never ate polyunsaturated fats. Never, except for olive oil, coconut oil was not a thing, all these kinds of, and it's the same way with the things that people try to use. They'll sit on their phone all day and think, oh, I'm going to feel better after this. But they don't. They're just reading everybody else's great life and thinking, my life isn't nearly as good as those guys. So, ugh. But also, our ancestors never had this to look at, and so it's foreign to our bodies to have those kinds of things that we think, oh, this will help, when in reality it doesn't help very much.
It doesn't help. Wow.
That was a very long answer for
that. That was a very good answer, and I think a lot of people will gain from everything that you put into that answer, because there's a lot there. I appreciate that.
How can you eliminate stressful situations from your life?
So the easy answer is go live in a cave. See, the question is tricky, to use your words, Jody, from earlier. The question is tricky because in my thinking of things, situations aren't inherently stressful. Otherwise, everyone who's in those situations would experience stress in those situations, but that's not the case. And so, how do you eliminate? I don't think it's possible to. I mean, we live in the environments we live in, and they are inherently crazy. You know, I think of. I don't live too much with people who are nurses. Actually, I have some really good friends who are nurses, and they will. Actually, I remember talking to one person who's a nurse just a couple weeks ago, and she was telling me about her day, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's the most chaotic, insane day that I could possibly imagine. I mean, it was just like jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. But she can't get out of that. She can't just say, oh, I'm not going to be here. That's her job, and she's chosen it, and she loves it, but it's also very chaotic, very, it's like things are constantly going on. And so the other answer to that question is, you know, how do you eliminate stressful situations? You can't eliminate the situations, but you can think about them in different ways. And so, you know, like if you could just say to yourself, I mean, gratitude all by itself works every time it's tried. I mean, if you just think to yourself, instead of, oh, I hate this, how this is, if you just said, I'm so grateful I have this opportunity. Or I'm so grateful I have people around me who are cool that I get to know. Or I'm so grateful that I'm learning so much about, you know, this, what I'm immersed in. Whenever we say grateful, that's the exact opposite of I'm threatened, not safe. And so that's just one example of a bunch of different ways that you can think about how you can interpret the situation in ways that your body goes, oh, I don't hear there's any threat here, so I must be safe. So no need to activate the stress response.
Right, right. That makes so much sense. And so I think, like you said, and this is I think one of the most powerful things that you teach is how we interpret the situation is huge. And so to eliminate stressful situations, we may have the exact same situations day after day, or as a nurse, you go to those 12-hour shifts, and it can be crazy and chaotic, but it doesn't have to be interpreted as stressful.
Right.
We just have to think about it differently. I can do this. What's the next best thing? What's the next best decision? Take the pause, take a deep breath, and think about the positive thoughts that you can, give your, think positive thoughts about what you're able to do, about what your ability is, and who can you collaborate with. And that's so powerful. And I think a lot of nurses can relate to the scenario that, that your friend told you about. Their day. But you can walk out at the end of the day feeling like, okay, I still have that sense of calm. I own that. I have power over that sense of calm by the way I interpret things during the day. And it's not about being passive and kind of like ignoring things. It's really actually being more engaged, I think.
100%, I agree. I mean, all the things you just said are spot on accurate. You can, I mean, being calm, being peaceful, being quiet-minded is a choice. And, I don't know if this is a lame or a good metaphor, but if you think of a hurricane or a tornado, inside of that tornado in the middle is peaceful. All the way through wherever it's going is quiet and peaceful. And you can either be in the part that's going round and round, or you can be in the middle where it's peaceful. And it's a choice. And it's entirely up to you. It has to be that way. Otherwise, everybody who is in those insane situations would be upset, but there's always somebody who's not. And that tells me, okay, that person must be thinking about this in a different way.
Ah, that's such a good point. Such a good point. All right. So this next question you have answered. I will ask it just to see if there's anything more to add. How do I fit in stress management strategies and self-care? So we can, I mean, like you've mentioned before, we live busy lives. And I know Jessica can relate to this. She's a full-time student. She has a 7-month-old baby. She's got a 5-year-old. Her husband just graduated, just started a new job. Life is stressful and busy. So how do we fit in stress management and self-care?
That's our 5th book, actually, of the 4. I mentioned there was 4 workbooks. I mean, I mentioned there was 5. I told about 4, and the 5th in the app talks about this very thing, that yes, we're all super busy, every one of us. I don't know anyone who's not busy. Even the retired people I know are busy. and so there's a couple ways to approach. Well, first of all, I would say you still want those 5 things, and thinking about things. You still want to sleep, eat clean, exercise, stretch out, breathe, yoga, and meditate. Here's the thing that I have found is, the more I do those things, the more I find that I have time for everything else. It's really strange. And I'll only spend like maybe 10 minutes meditating, and eating is just what we do all day. And sleeping, I've actually found that when I exercise, when I add some exercise to my day, 1, I fall asleep super fast. And 2, I don't need as much sleep. It's really a strange thing. Unless I've really worked out hard, I don't need as much sleep. So I have more time in the day to do a little extra meditating and a little extra yoga. And so they kind of build on each other without infringing on all the busy things that I have during the day. Now, I have 4 kids. My wife and I, we've been practicing this kind of lifestyle for as long as we've been married, 30 some years. And even when we had 3 kids who were all, we had the initial 3 kids, and all of them were in at least 2 sports all year round. So we had 6 sports at least going on, and she worked full time and I worked full time. And it was just crazy busy. And we decided we're still going to make sure we get in workouts. We're still going to make sure. And so we're still going to make sure we meditate. We're still going to make sure we're getting enough sleep. And we're still going to make sure we eat clean. And so what happened is, since we decided that priority was high enough for us, it just became part of our day. And that's the only way I know of to include those in your day, is you have to decide that priority is high enough to make it part of my day. The thing that for some reason, when I was young, it occurred to me that my health is really important, because I saw people in my own family, I mentioned my genes. I saw people who were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who were barely able to move around. And I thought, I do not want that to happen to me. And so we made a commitment, my wife and I, that this is of that much importance, because I want to, when I'm 50, 60 now, 70 soon, 80, I still want to be doing all the things that I want to do, instead of, there's an old, I think this is a Buddhist phrase that I really like. It goes like this, and I hope I can say it correctly. Bad health, 1 desire. Good health, 1,000 desires. And that's what I recognized. If I'm healthy, then I can do everything else I want. But if I'm healthy, and I have friends, we're going and playing mahjong with some of our friends tonight, and this guy is only about 5 or 6 years older than me, and he can barely move. He's got arthritis so bad, and he's had so many health problems. And when we got to know him 30 years ago, that's how he was back. He never did anything. He would golf, but he would ride the golf cart. And that was the extent of his exercise. And I thought his only desire right now is to not get sicker. And I thought, I don't want that. And so I just made it a priority. And that's the only way. I mean, if you go to any counselor, any coach, ultimately it comes down to, you have to make it a priority.
Make it a priority. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say it's a priority that's big enough that you will stick it in your day and not let it disappear like most New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. So I read recently about finding something that motivates you, and then you can make it a priority. And I think what you're talking about is that long-term vision. Doing this now, yes, it matters now. It also matters long-term. It will make a difference long-term. Jessica, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just think it's important to also surround yourself with people that have the same vision as you. So like, if my husband didn't care if I went and got my walk once a day, then it would be a lot harder for me to fit that in, because then I'm handling the 2 kids and the 2 dogs when I just want to walk by myself to reset,
Self-care.
Or whoever is your support system. I think it's important to find that support system that serves you well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. And if you don't have access to a support system, you can still decide and make it a priority. And I agree with you. It makes it really a lot easier if you've got that, for sure.
Good points. So Jessica, the next 3 questions kind of go together. Do you want to combine those?
Yes. Okay, so what are the physical, psychological, and behavioral symptoms of stress?
So I mentioned this earlier when we went through all the health problems. All of those are symptoms of stress. Yes, they do have other components to them. Heart disease isn't entirely stress related, and it's a symptom of stress. I mean, there's many causes for cancer, and a weakened immune system helps a cancer grow. And so all of the maladies that we struggle with, whether they're physical, psychological, or behavioral, are stress related, but not caused by stress. And so I don't rule out anything. I mean, I don't, if something is out of balance for somebody, see, this goes back to our thoughts about balance. Anytime the body is out of balance, which is entirely the case when we're in chronic stress, every cell, every tissue, every organ, every bit of the body is out of balance in chronic stress, in the stress response. And so whatever happens as a result of that imbalance could be anything, from depression to headaches to back pain to muscle pain. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people who have fibromyalgia, and once they learned how to meditate, their fibromyalgia went away. I worked with people who have headaches. Once they figured out how to relax deeply, their headaches go away and they don't come back. And so the answer to the question is all of the symptoms that could happen when we're out of balance are symptoms of stress, not caused by, but symptomatic of. And so it's all, okay, what can we do to get back in balance? Excuse me.
What a great answer. I almost want you to say that again because that makes so much sense. We don't have to look at it from, oh, are these physical symptoms a sign of stress? Is this psychological symptom a sign of stress? Because what I say that again, that makes so much sense, just about being in balance.
So, let's see if I can say it again. I'll try. So the entire physiology, and I think psychology, the emotional state, when we're out of balance, when we're in the chronic stress state, or even in short-term stress state, but it's not problematic if it's just acute stress. If we just see a snake and then we run and then it's over. But whenever we're out of balance, every part of the body, and an out of balance tissue results in health problems, whether that's kidneys or liver, pancreas. I think if the body is trying to run from a bear, it's producing a physiology that's different than sitting still and being safe.
Yeah.
And so
the body wants homeostasis. The body wants balance.
Yeah.
And if we can focus on our interpretation of events, we can decrease stress and help bring our body back to that state of balance.
That's the whole, stress management is entirely about going from chronic stress to rest and repair. And
rest and repair is balance. I like that.
That's balance, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we heal.
Yeah, that's so great. All right. So the last question, and I'm excited to hear about this because I think you probably live this answer, but what is your long-term vision for stress management?
So do you mean for myself, for the world, for what my vision?
I would say what is your vision for for nurses, for community, for anyone that you offer this to? What's your long-term vision?
So the thing that I know is for sure, especially during and since COVID, is people are really, really struggling emotionally. They're struggling psychologically. Really, we've seen it's off the charts now in comparison to, say, 2018 or 2010 or 2000. The rates of anxiety and depression and suicide are astronomical in comparison. And the thing that I know for sure, and I don't say this in a bragging way, I say this because I've been practicing it on my own and teaching it to lots and lots of people, is we have a set of tools here that work without side effects to help the body heal so that we can feel a lot better, because a healed physiology, a healed psychology feels a heck of a lot better than a out of balance one. And so if it's one person or a billion people, my vision is, let's get these tools in people's hands and practicing them as importantly as how the public health world has dealt with tobacco. In the last 10, 20 years, there's been an enormous push, to rethink tobacco, that it's not what everyone thought it was in the 50s, in the 40s, where everyone started smoking and that's what they did. They thought it was actually a good thing back then. And in the last 20 years or so, there's been an enormous public awareness shift that tobacco is not a good call for very much of anything health-wise. And we need a similar shift in our approach to stress management that is away from symptom covering. It's like we put band-aids on things thinking we don't put a band-aid on a cut thinking this band-aid's going to fix the cut. We just put a band-aid on it so that it doesn't get infected, or maybe other reasons, but that's to me. And when we take some medication, for example, for anxiety, we're just doing the same thing. It feels better, maybe momentarily, but it's not fixing the problem. And the tools that I've been lucky enough to learn are the way to get at the root, at the seeds of our stress. So we go in there and we take the seeds out, the roots out, then the symptoms will go away. But we need to have that shift of awareness from everybody, or as many people as possible, that this is possible. Because where was I today? I was listening to somebody speaking, and they said stress and anxiety are everywhere. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking stress and anxiety aren't anywhere except in our own minds. But we've got that mantra going out there that the world is a stressful place. And as long as we have that mantra, we are doomed, because you can't fix the world. But if we switch that to the mantra of my mind is stressful, we have control over that part. And when we can do something, when we figure out how to deal with this, then the world just becomes the world. It's just a place. It's not stressful. It's not anything. It's just, trees and houses and people and events. And when we recognize I can interpret this how I choose, and I choose peace, I choose forgiveness, I choose gratitude, then I actually think the world starts to feel more that way. But for sure, I feel that way. And that's kind of my vision. It's a tough one because it's a big mountain to climb, but I like mountain climbing.
So great. Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I think that a funny realization I had while working on the terra firma stuff is that first of all, that once we learn this and teach it to our kids and they teach it to their kids, we're saving our kids from so much pain, really, just figuring out how to de-stress in their adulthood or going through health issues. But us as adults, learning this now, we are not that much more different than a 5-year-old learning how to de-stress. And it's so funny. Even if our tantrums maybe don't look exactly the same as ours, they're pretty similar sometimes. And
They're so similar. Yep.
Yeah, I think just the generational change that this information can make is so huge.
Wow, that's really good. That's really good. So Michael, thank you so much for your time, and Jessica, thank you for leading this. I do want to, when nurses have completed the course, they provide feedback, and I want to read a couple of comments about. There's a question that says, what do you plan to do differently, and what do you plan to incorporate into your practice? And many of them say that, so regular meditation and relaxation techniques, so I can better cope and help others to cope with real life dangers. One change that I intend on making after this course is to be more aware of my thoughts and feelings during high stress moments so that I can logically go over these steps and help decrease my stress response. Another person said, I will step back during the gap. They do gap in quotation marks, period, and choose how I will react to the situation. So it's really making a choice to that. And then many of them said to become more empathetic. And I thought that was really interesting, where you're teaching about how to stop the stress response, and out of that, and there were several said this will help me learn to become more empathetic, and I just love that. This is such great information that, like with your vision, really has the opportunity to change lives. I know it's changed my thinking. And based on the responses we're getting from the course, it's changing a lot of people's thinking. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I'm the same as you. We're all working on it. It's a daily adventure.
Work in progress. Yes, yes. Anything else you want to add before we close out this?
No, I have
meeting?
talked way too long.
Oh, it's perfect.
It's a fun adventure. I mean, if you looked at just big picture stuff and said, and if you just decided, wow, my life's an adventure, rather than my life is whatever sounds awful. If you just, man, this is an adventure, and you use that kind of context for everything you do. I mean, an adventure is designed to be exciting, crazy, chaotic. An adventure isn't sitting in a rowboat on a lake. An adventure is like wild roller coaster. And if you look at, I mean, it goes back to our thoughts. If we big picture, if we look at things as, okay, this is an exciting game, an exciting adventure, and we keep that in mind, then whatever happens, we approach with, well, let's see what this adventure holds for me and this part of the adventure, as opposed to, oh, another day at work, this is going to be awful.
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that, as opposed to as soon as we get here, then everything will be fine. And
right.
But what you're saying is every day is an adventure. We still have goals that we want to reach,
right.
But we're enjoying the journey along the way.
100%. Yep.
Love that.
I love that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Yes. I think that's it. Jessica, anything else?
I think that's all. I feel like I've met a celebrity. This is exciting.
I know. And like, we've got a whole weekend now that we can just like contemplate on this. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
See you.